So today I want to talk a little bit about distribution shapes. We have three major distribution shapes that we're going to come up against, and there is actually a fourth, which is bimodal. Bimodal tends to be best when the mode is best. You're not really going to use that very often. But your three major shapes are symmetric, which means mostly balanced. You could have outliers on both sides, or you could have no outliers whatsoever. Anytime a distribution is symmetric, the mean and standard deviation are going to be the best measures of center and spread. Next category is skewed. It doesn't matter whether your graph is going to be skewed left or skewed right. The median and the IQR are best with skew. Skew usually just has one outlier in one direction. Skewed left is going to have the outlier on the left, or the tail of the graph on the left, or the pile of the data on the right. Skewed right is the opposite. Skewed right, you have an outlier on the right, the tail on the right, or a pile of data on the left. Personally, I tend to focus more on the tail side to see which way the data is being pulled, which way it's being skewed. So for various types of data, we may have various types of graphs. So let's look at some of the distribution shapes of those really quickly. So with Boxplots, here are three major shapes. So anytime it looks mostly balanced, even if it's not in the center of the picture, so long as this bit of the picture is mostly balanced, we can call that symmetric. And even though we use the 5-number summary to graph this, that means that the mean and the standard deviation are best. Over here, we have a box plot where the whisker on the left is much, much longer than the whisker on the right. So the whisker on the left is skewing the data left. So we are skewed left. And then again, it doesn't matter where you are on the graph. I could extend this line far, far to the right, and it would still mean that this part of the graph is skewed left. And then this one down here is going to be skewed right, because the whisker on the right is much longer than the whisker on the left. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're skewed left or skewed right. Your median and your IQR are going to be best anytime you're skewed. You may have already seen me looking at some distribution shapes using something called a distribution curve. That's useful in Dotplots, histograms, and stem and leaf plots. So with a distribution curve, that's just this curve that I drew kind of on top of everything so I could see what the main shape was. I used both a dot plot and then I kind of drew a histogram on top of the dot plot because they work pretty much the same way. So again, this one seems mostly balanced. It's not perfectly balanced, but it's mostly balanced, so that's symmetric. And again, the distribution curve helps kind of see where that balance might be. And again, symmetric, the mean and standard deviation are always best. This one, our tail is on the left. Our pile is on the right. So because the tail is on the left, that one is skewed left. And again, anytime you are skewed, the median and the IQR are going to be the best measures of center and spread. And then down here, we have the tail part, the lower, longer part of the graph on the right side, and the pile of data, the highest part, on the left. So that means that because the tail is on the right, or maybe we have outliers on the right, that is skewed right. And again, anytime we are skewed, the median and the IQR are best. Now, stem and leaf plots can sometimes be a little bit tricky, depending on which type of stem and leaf plot we're looking at. So one of the tricks that I often use if you just have a single stem and leaf plot is turn the paper 90 degrees counterclockwise. And then you can draw in your distribution curve, and you can start to see the way the skew goes. So this one seems mostly balanced again. So that would be symmetric. And again, anytime you have a symmetric graph, the mean and the standard deviation are the best measures of center and spread. Let's look at these two. So it looks like on this one we have kind of a tail on the left and a pile on the right. So when we turn that way, it is skewed left. It may also be helpful to remind yourself, sometimes I do this for myself, that I just put a left and a right. And this will also be a little bit more useful once we get to the back-to-back ones, because they seem like they want to work one way, but they actually work a different way. And then this guy, third one, seems to mostly be piled up on the left, and then the tail kind of drops immediately to the right. And again, reminding myself that that way is going to be left and that way is going to be right. So this one is actually skewed right. We have the lower, longer sort of tail acting on the right. And again, the median and IQR, the interquartile range, are going to be your best measures. So like I said, back-to-back stem plots actually still work with the same left and right idea. It's just that now we can't necessarily use our rotation idea. It feels like you should be able to rotate that way, and because it looks pretty symmetric this way, it is symmetric. Now, that only works because it's symmetric. The skew is actually on the wrong side. So we're still working with the same idea of you still want to turn it so the set of leaves on the right is your top. And again, that looks mostly symmetric. They're not the same as each other, but they are each symmetric. And again, we're still working where up is to the left and down is to the right. And since this is still pretty balanced left to right, even upside down, it's all still symmetric for that graph. So again, if we continue with that idea where the up is left, sometimes you can put them in the middle to help, and the down is right, you might be able to see that this distribution curve is skewing us to the left, and this distribution curve is also skewing us to the left. So this picture is actually skewed left. And again, if you like turning the paper over and over again, please continue to just turn it toward the left so that the right side is now the top. Or again, you can just remind yourself that up now counts as left and down now counts as right. So both of these are skewed right. And finally, the bimodal distribution shape just means that you have two different peaks. So bimodal plots, you're going to have two different tops, two different most amounts. So Dotplots and histograms, you're going to have sort of a valley in between two high points. This is one flavor that dot plots, the bimodal dot plots and histograms sometimes take. Again, the stem and leaf plot, up is to your left and down is to your right, or you can turn the paper like I just did, and we can kind of see that there's a high part, and then we have a trough, and then another high part with our distribution curve. The high part could be in the middle or at the far extremes. And same thing going on with our back-to-back. Up is still going to be our left, and down is still going to be our right. So we have a very high extreme peak on the left. Maybe you could call this one trimodal, but because these two really outpace everything else, I would still count this mostly as bimodal. And again, two modes here mean that you're going to have some sort of valley between two peaks. But those are your distribution shapes.